Hello, welcome to Papa Nick's Music. I am, as always, your host, Papa Nick Lewis, and today we're getting right back into the history of the Monkees, according to Papa Nick. Last week we got up to the end of 1966. Today, in a whirlwind tour, we are going to wrap it all up. We're going to start with 67 and we're going to go up to the present day. As I told you last week, my intended audience here is the uninitiated, people who are not completely thoroughly versed in Monkee lore. If you are versed in Monkee lore, you'll enjoy the ride and you will get my take on things, but you may not find new information that you weren't already aware of. And as I mentioned last week, I'm not a historian, I'm not a musicologist. I am a fan who reads fairly obsessively about his favored musical artists. So, be kind. Okay, we ready to wrap this thing up? Okay, let's get right back into it. As I said earlier, Mike was a total control kind of guy. Always has been a total control kind of guy. Donnie Kirshner, also a total control kind of guy. And you can't have two total control kinds of guys working together on the same project. Things are going to get ugly. And things came to a head. See what I did there? That's so clever. Early in 1967. January, in fact. A variety of events happened that polarized the relationship between Don Kirshner and the Monkees in general and Mike Nesmith in particular. We kick off the year with a meeting that's happening at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Don Kirshner and his lawyer, Herb Mullis, have come to Beverly Hills. Keep in mind, at this point, Don Kirshner is living and working in New York City. All of this music that's being done is being recorded in New York City and then being sent to, the tapes are being sent to Los Angeles for the Monkees to sing on. So it's not just that they're not allowed to perform while the music's being played. They're not even in the same state while the music is being played, right? But Donnie and Herb Mullis come to Los Angeles to meet with the Monkees to give them each a royalty check for about $250,000, which was a lot of money in those days. I mean, it's a lot of money today, but it was a lot of money in those days. And at the meeting, Donnie and Mike had a bit of a contretemps, as they say. According to Mike, Don had said something to the effect of that this check for your part of the royalties on the sales of all these records is a testament to the quality of the music, which Mike thought was hilarious. Because it's it's testament to how good the marketing machine is, but beside the point. But Mike started arguing with Kirshner about something, and Herb Mullis, because he's a lawyer, is getting in between and is pointing out that Mike has a contract that he lives up to. And in a fit of anger, Mike turned around and put his fist through the wall and told Mullis that could have been his face. Which kind of startled everybody. I don't normally go around punching walls. Bit of insight into what kind of flash temper Mike had at the time. But let's make this clear here. We've got friction, right? If guys are putting their hands through walls, we've got friction. To make matters worse, I mean, this is the situation. We've got that level of animosity. To make matters worse, just because he's the kind of guy who can do it, just because he's got the authority to do it, by God, he's going to do it. Donnie released more of the Monkees without ever telling any of the Monkees that it was being released. More of the Monkees. And the thing about releasing, this is, by the way, as you can tell by the thing up here, this is my Rhino Records re-release of this. I don't have an original More of the Monkees. The thing that pissed the Monkees off the most about this was that they weren't told about it, right? They found out that it was released when they're on tour, they're playing a concert, they're done with the concert, and somebody says, "So, how happy are you with the new album that's out?" And they're like, "What? what are you talking about?" They had to send a guy across the street to go to a record store to pick up a copy of the record and to buy a copy of the record and bring it to the hotel so that they could look at it. And as soon as they saw it and they saw this picture, they were incensed because they fucking hated that picture. This picture is part... I'm trying to get this where it's not going to be too glary. There we go. This picture was part of a photo shoot that they did for JCPenney's to advertise a range of clothing that they had nothing to do with. They hated having to do that original photo shoot. They thought the pictures sucked, and it just incensed them that Donnie had used one of those pictures as the cover of this album that he didn't even tell them that he was making. Gah! So, Mike pushes back. He has an interview later in the month with the Saturday Evening Post, in which he reveals that the Monkees don't play the music on the records. I say reveals, and I'm using my sarcastic bunny quotes, because this should have been the kind of thing that reveals like. No, this should be more like a no shit Sherlock thing, because nobody played their own instruments in 1966, in 1967. Nobody did. You hired session musicians to play. If you were a regularly touring act in American pop music in the 60s, you did not play your own instruments. You had session musicians play that. You'd go in, you'd sing the vocals, and then you'd go back out on the road. It's the way everybody did it. But Mike made it official. Oh, the Monkees are prefab. This is where the prefab 4 came from. The Monkees aren't real. They're fake. They don't even play their own instruments. Yeah, this is where that comes from. So we've got this pissing contest going on between Kirshner on one side and the Monkees, mostly Mike, on the other side. And Columbia Pictures is looking at this and, hey, we can't have this. This is the kind of thing that interrupts the flow of the cash in the cash machine. We do not need to do this. We should be feeding the beast, not irritating it. And so, as a compromise to settle everybody down, Columbia Pictures steps in and they tell Donnie that, okay, Donnie, we're not going to tell you what to do when it comes to the A-sides. You stock the A-sides. You pick the singles. You're the man. You've got the golden ear. We've got faith in you. But we want you to start including monkey music that features at least one of the Monkees as a musician on the B-side of the records. It's a nice compromise. Monkees would have been happy with it because that's all they wanted. That's all Mike and Peter wanted. They wanted to be able to point to the music that they were playing so that they could use that later on in their career. But Donnie's a total control guy. He doesn't like being told what to do. He does not even by his bosses. He doesn't like being told what to do. So Donnie, in his final total control pissing contest move, decides that the Monkees don't know what they're doing. He's going to just go ahead and do what he wants to do, and he prepares the next single. The A-side is A Little Bit Me, A Little Bit You, throwing a bone to Neil Diamond for the success of I'm a Believer. And he makes a temporary version of the single, a limited release version of the single that has She Hangs Out on the B-side. He releases it in Canada, and it's got a limited release, right? This is not a widespread thing. And as soon as they find out that he's done this, hue and cry go up, stink is raised, and even though Donnie withdrew the single, it wasn't enough, and he ended up getting fired. The first time he ever got fired from a job. Donnie loses control over the Monkees. Mike wins. More importantly, from this point forward, the Monkees are a real band. The Monkees themselves are now in control of what music gets recorded, what music doesn't get recorded, what music goes on A-sides, what music goes on B-sides, what music goes on the albums, what music goes in the TV show. The Monkees are now a real band. So now the Monkees are in charge of their own music. The first thing they do in March, right? Kirshner was fired in February. So in March, they released the single, A Little Bit Me, A Little Bit You. They agreed that was going to be the single. But now the B-side is The Girl I Knew Somewhere. Mike Nesmith wrote it, and the Monkees perform it. That's the first recording that was released that is the four Monkees themselves playing the song. As soon as filming is wrapped on the first season, they go to work on their first album as a self-contained group. Headquarters is the name of it, and they are, as Mickey says, determined to play every single stinking note on the record. Once they're done recording the album, the season has wrapped up. The first season has wrapped up, and in April they head off to the UK for their tour. The album Headquarters is released in May. Over the summer, Pleasant Valley Sunday is released. Eventually it hits number 3 on the charts. The guys are back to work on their next album. They're also working on the second season of the TV show. In the recording studio, for the most part, on this second album that they're doing together, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Jones Limited, they are still working as a group creatively. They aren't working as a group in terms of all the band members. Most notably, Mickey's tired of drumming. So we bring in Fast Eddie Ho as the drummer, but you still have most of the songs on Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Jones. Yeah, that's Eddie Ho playing the drums. But that's Mike playing the guitar. That's Peter playing the organ. That's Chip Douglas playing the bass. If it's not Chip Douglas, it's Peter playing the bass. If it's not Mike playing the guitar, it's Peter playing the guitar. That's if you hear any sort of hand percussion, that's Davey, right? They are all participating in the studios. And they're recording a pretty damn good album, too. Also, in August, as they are touring, they've got this touring schedule where they tour for a bit, they're recording, and then they go and they tour, and they that kind of thing. And in August, some of the concerts that they do in the North American leg of their summer tour are recorded for later release. They were released in July of 1987 as Live 1967. And this is a pretty good album. It's a pretty good live album. There's a lot of crowd noise, as you would expect at a Monkees concert, but the quality of the recording's pretty decent. And you can hear how good they've become as a live band at this point. They've managed to work out a pretty good set of songs, and as a live band, they work really well. And I think they worked as well as they did as a live band because of Davey. Davey was the linchpin. I mentioned earlier, he was a decent drummer before they started. He knew how to play the drums before they started. If there was a song where Mickey wanted to be out front, Davey could cover the drums. He was a good enough musician that he could play the bass. They had to teach him how to play the song. He wasn't going to just pick it up on his own, but once they taught him how to play it, he could play it. He knew how to, he knew how to work the thing. He could play the songs. He could play the organ well enough. If you've seen the version of the video of Circle Sky that was used in the movie Head, that's the classic 1967 lineup here, right? You've got Mike playing guitar, you got Peter playing bass, you got Mickey back there playing the drums, and you got Davey playing the organ with his left hand and shaking the maracas with his right. I mean, that's the kind of thing that Davey could do. I still think the most impressive thing I've ever seen in concert footage is the Monkees switching drummers from Mickey to Davy during a song. And it's not like we've got two drum kits and it just segues over. No, Davy walked up, stands behind Mickey. He's got a pair of drumsticks in his hands, and he stands behind Mickey and he starts playing the ride cymbal, and then Mickey starts moving sideways, and Davy reaches around and starts playing the snare, and then Mickey jumps up and runs away, and Davy plops down in his seat to be able to hit the kick. I mean, it's truly impressive to be able to switch drummers in the middle of a song. Blows my mind. As far as how successful their records were, I think a lot of that is down to Mickey's voice. I think Mickey's vocal style propelled the band as a recording act. But Davy was the one who made it possible for them to be a self-contained live band. But they're working like dogs. They play concerts throughout the summer. They start filming the second season of the TV series in the fall. The second season of the series starts on September 11th with the episode "A Nice Place to Visit." Daydream Believer is released in October and becomes their third #1 single. Their fourth album, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Jones Limited, is released in November. Oh man, things are firing on all cylinders. Life is good. Except everything's going good except there's no nice way to say this. The Monkees themselves are being a pain in the ass. They have had so much success. They've had success with their TV series. They won the Emmy for Outstanding Comedy for the first series, for the first season. They've had success, obviously, in record sales. Monkees and More of the Monkees combined were on the charts for, I want to say, 31 weeks, something like that. I'll have a crawl down here if that's wrong. I don't want to stop and look it up, but it's some outrageous number like that. And it was consecutive because the album that knocked the Monkees off of the #1 spot was More of the Monkees. So they dominated the charts. They were successful on tour. They were touring internationally. They went to England and had the same kind of reaction there. I mean, they were recording. They were in charge of their music, and they got to pick and do what they wanted to do. And I mean, everything was firing on all cylinders, and they were full of themselves. They're now rock stars. But you know that series isn't going to make itself. They still have to show up. They still have to learn their lines. They still have to hit their marks. And the guys are having a hard time doing that. Part of the problem is that from the start, they've been given a lot of leeway to be improvisational and, poke the bear. They've got that kind. They've always had that kind of comedic shtick. But now they were starting to get out of control with mugging for the cameras and stuff like that. There's a blooper reel that I've seen that has a clip. It's an excerpt from the episode "The Monkey's Paw," and you've got the various monkeys coming in one at a time and then zipping out of the frame, and then one other will come in. And during the whole time that this is happening, Hans Conried, a very well-respected comic actor, is sitting at the table waiting to start the scene. And the monkeys are coming in one at a time, this sort of thing. And you hear over the top of this the director, Jim Frawley, saying, "Okay, we need all the monkeys in there. Okay, guys, we need all of you in the shot. We need all of you guys in the shot." And they keep zipping around because it's like they're not paying attention. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And eventually, Hans Conried just stands up and turns away and says, "I hate these kids." They had gotten full of themselves to the point where it was getting hard for them to do the series. They're getting tired of doing the series. Raybert is tired of forcing them, finagling them, cajoling them into doing their work. Everybody's just getting tired of it. They're getting tired of the series. It's interesting that they are getting tired of the series because they're also at the point where they are getting more to do. Peter directs one of the episodes in season 2, Monkees Mind Their Manner, which aired February 26th. Mickey wrote and directed one of the episodes, The Frodest Caper, which was the last episode to air, episode 58, that aired on March 25th. But at this point, Raybert is already tired of. They're tired of making the show. The staff, the film crew are tired of dealing with the Monkees. The Monkees themselves are tired of doing it. Everybody's tired of the show. So when NBC makes it known that they're not going to be picking up a third season of the show, nobody's really heartbroken about it. They're all ready to move on to the next project, which is going to be the motion picture that they're going to work on together, Head. So as soon as they all, Raybert and the Monkees, realized that the series is going to end after after 2 seasons, they started working on making a movie together. Rafelson takes the Monkees and a buddy of his that he's recruited to help with the project, a little-known actor, writer, director by the name of Jack Nicholson, off to a resort, and they all hang around for a weekend brainstorming ideas for the movie. Generating skits and dialogue and stuff like this. They spend the weekend getting baked and tossing around ideas, and when they're done, Nicholson takes the tape recordings of the proceedings, and he builds a script out of it. As soon as the second season wrapped up its production, they started filming the movie Head. When the Monkees initially found out that they weren't going to get any writing credit, because this was they were thinking this was a collaborative thing. They were all brainstorming ideas. They would all get equal credit for it, and they didn't. They didn't receive any writing or production credit on it at all. They just received acting credits. And when they discovered that was going to happen, they staged a mini protest. A walkout on the first day. Peter was the only one who showed up to work. This protest, along with the general pain in the assness that they'd been inflicting on everybody during season 2, meant that this was pretty much the last thing that Raybert and the Monkees were going to do together. But they put their differences behind them. They came up with an amicable solution. In the credits, it just says, it has the monkey names. It doesn't really say what they do, and then it goes on from there. So, okay, you can interpret that as however you want to interpret it. Anyway, Head was filmed between February and May of 1968. The last episodes of season 2 are airing during that time frame. The latest album that they've whipped up, The Birds, the Bees, and the Monkees, is released during that time frame. It was released April 22nd. The Birds, the Bees, and the Monkees is an interesting album in that it has the Monkees returning to essentially the Kirshner model, right? Kirshner had different producers who were working with individual Monkee vocalists. Now, that's what the Monkees are doing. Each of the Monkees is working individually with their own, arranging their own studio time, their own musicians, performing their own songs. They might, crop up on one another's songs. Mike might draft Mickey to sing one of his songs, that kind of thing. But for the most part, each Monkee is recording his own music. Which is one of the reasons why when I listen to Birds and the Bees and the Monkees, one of the reasons why I'm not as fond of it is that it's a very disjointed album. It sounds like it was made by a bunch of different people because it was made by a bunch of different people. And the results also are disappointing. Sales of records have been steadily declining since their peak with More of the Monkees. the single that they released off of Birds and Bees. Birds and Bees has Daydream Believer on it, but Daydream Believer was released as a single prior to the album. They released D.W. Washburn as a single, and it was lackluster in terms of its sales. The highest it ever hit on the charts was number 19. It was the first single that they released that didn't hit the top 10, and it was the last time that one of their singles hit the top 40 until 1986 with That Was Then, This Is Now. But the guys themselves are excited. They just finished filming their first feature-length movie. They finally have finished the series that was starting to drag them down, even though they're kind of proud of the work that they did. They've got a tour that they do of the Pacific Rim. Starts late summer, goes through early fall. That is, they are very excited about. Everything is coming up roses, and they've got high hopes that this fall is going to be wonderful and that Head is going to be the crowning jewel. The problem is the Monkees have a track record of making just titanically, phenomenally bad marketing decisions. The best example of this is when they hired Jimi Hendrix to be their opening act, right? They're out there, they're playing concerts to, as Mike Nesmith describes it, the sea of waving pink arms, right? You got all these 12-year-old girls who are, we want Davy, we want Davy. And they unleash Jimi Hendrix on that. I mean, it's just, it's like you would think somebody would have connected those two dots. Those are not difficult dots to connect, right? But the Monkees didn't. They did what they wanted to do. They never stopped to think whether it was a good idea or not. And Head was another good example of this. They made the movie because they thought it would be a good movie to make, even though it was the exactly wrong movie for them to make. Head, if you have not seen Head, go see this movie. It is wonderful. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is a crowning achievement. But it is not the movie that the Monkees should have made. It is a very darkly sarcastic, artistic statement. And in 1968, nobody was looking to the Monkees for a darkly sarcastic, artistic statement, right? The people who were looking to the Monkees were looking for Daydream Believer. They were not looking for dark sarcasm. The people who wanted dark sarcasm were not going to go to the Monkees to get it, right? So it's just a failure just across the board. There's no way that anybody would go see this movie if they knew that the Monkees were in it, unless they didn't know anything else about the movie, in which case they were going to be horribly disappointed and scarred because they weren't going to be allowed in anyway because it was going to be rated in such a way that they would need a parent to get them in. It was just a nightmare of a movie. It didn't help that the marketing for the movie itself was as inept as it was. They were trying for a very artsy marketing approach where the commercials were just a guy and you see the head, and over that you would hear head, and it's like, it was doomed to fail, and boy howdy did it. It pretty much was the end of the Monkees as we know them. It was nice while it lasted. So November 1968 was essentially the death of the Monkees. Head came out and flopped. The Monkees taped a TV special, 33 1/3 Revolutions per Monkey. And the taping of that special, which happened in November, had its own issues. They didn't have much time to prepare for it, and when it came time to actually tape it, there was a strike at NBC, which meant that they had to find a new studio to transport the sets to. When they got to the new studio, there were issues with the control room. They had to have a control room that was like out in a truck, like they were doing a football game or something. It was a nightmare. The special itself didn't air until the following year, April of '69, and it performed so badly. NBC had originally offered to fund 3 specials for the Monkees, and 33 and a third revolutions per monkey was so bad that they withdrew the offer for the remaining two specials. Excuse me. Peter saw the writing on the wall and bought out his contract and left the group in December 1968. So as we head into 1969, the Monkees are now a trio. 33 and a third revolutions per monkey finally airs. NBC thought so little of it that they put it up against the Academy Awards, knowing that nobody was going to watch it then. Insult added to injury, due to a technical issue. The segments of the show were aired out of order. It was a nightmare. Nobody came out of 33 and a third revolutions per monkey looking good. The Monkees were still recording and releasing music. Their original plan back in '68, when Peter was still on board, was that they were going to do, in 1969, they were going to do a double album. They were going to call it The Monkees Present, and each monkey was going to take a side, right? Album 1, side 1, Mickey. Album 2, side 2, Davy. And I'm just making this up. I don't know if they actually set the side assignments. But that was the thought. They were going to do a double album, and each monkey was going to have a side. When Peter left, that kind of threw the double album idea into the trash. But they did release 2 albums during the year. The first of the 2 was Instant Replay. Instant Replay consisted mostly of songs that were recorded back in the Kirshner era, that were dusted off, reworked, maybe a little bit of re-recording, a little bit of dubbing. And then the second album of the year was The Monkees Present, which was stuff written and recorded over the last year or 2. Neither album sold particularly well. None of the singles did particularly well. Attendance at their concerts steadily dwindled, so that early in 1970, Mike followed Peter's lead and bought out the remainder of his contract and immediately went solo and started recording material with his new band, the First National Band. Mickey and Davy soldiered on. They had 1 album left on the contract, and by God, Mickey and Davy did it. They recorded Changes, released in June 1970. Changes was produced by Jeff Barry, who was one of the original Kirshner era producers. He produced I'm a Believer. And some of the songs on Changes were songs that he had originally tried to get done back in the Kirshner days. Many of the songs, according to Davy, were songs that he was trying to get recorded with Andy Kim, who was a buddy of his, and they couldn't get funding for that album, so Jeff Barry just repurposed it to make it into a Monkees album, which pissed Davy off. Mickey, for the most part, didn't care. He was getting a check and he was just showing it up. It was a contractual obligation, and nobody had any issues. Nobody had any illusions. The Monkees were pretty much dead. We're heading into the 70s and we are out of gas. Apart from the Monkees being shown on Saturday morning TV, which is where I came to know them, is where I became a fan, not much monkey business went on for quite some time. The closest we have to Monkees music is the album Dolenz, Jones, Boyce, and Hart. Mickey and Davy got together with Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart to do some concerts together. It was billed as the guys who wrote 'em and the guys who sang 'em, which the cheesy factor of that just makes me laugh every time. They wanted to tour under the name The Monkees. I mean, if Mickey and Davy could be the Monkees, when it was just the two of them, adding Boyce and Hart, who were the primary songwriters for the Monkees. Yeah. But they couldn't use, they were legally prohibited from using the name The Monkees. They didn't own it, and Columbia Pictures wouldn't let them do it. But Dolenz, Jones, Boyce, and Hart toured around for a little bit. They released an album. Not much there. For the most part, through the 70s, the former Monkees worked on their own projects. None of them were particularly successful when compared to the heights of their Monkey Mania fame. Mike was probably the most successful creatively. He had recorded and released a series of albums to fewer and fewer sales, running deeper and deeper into the ground. And after a while, he shifted his attention over to video production. He saw early on that the music video, which had existed for quite some time as a promotional tool, could be seen as an artwork in and of itself. And so he started doing videos for his songs, started directing videos for other artists, and was maybe not single-handedly responsible for the video emerging as the dominant musical art form of the 80s, but was carrying a lot of the weight in the effort. He had the idea for, first off, that a video could be an artistic statement in and of itself. He had an idea for a TV show that was just videos, not a talk show with videos, interspersed, but just a TV show of videos. He called it Pop Clips, and that show was the foundation upon which the cable channel MTV was built. It's not quite 100% accurate to say that Mike Nesmith invented MTV, but we're a step away from that. He received the first Grammy for long-form video for Elephant Parts in 1982. Was a category of Grammy that was created to reward his effort with Elephant Parts. So he was having some pretty big, he had a pretty big splash in the 70s, late 70s and early 80s with his videos and what he did with video. But for the Monkees on the whole, it certainly seemed like the story had come to a close. But then, as part of the 20th anniversary of the Monkees TV show and the first album, MTV had a day-long marathon of all 58 episodes of the TV series. And it was staggeringly popular. The TV series was still accessible, largely because it was timeless. The writers, the producers, the directors, they all went out of their way to avoid any sort of topical references, which meant that the comedy was just as fresh in the 80s as it was in the 60s. I mean, the fashions were different and weird, but the comedy itself still worked, and it still does work. It's a very well-made TV show. It was clearly a well-produced, well-written, well-performed comedy. But the music also gained a new audience. Rhino Records started releasing. I held up earlier my Rhino copy of More of the Monkees. I have, of the albums that I've got, all of them but one. My copy of the Birds, the Bees, and the Monkees is an original Cole Gems issue. Everything else is Rhino releases, re-releases. And, thank God for that, because it was easier to find them rather than wading through used record stores trying to find the one that you're missing. And no scratches or anything. Loved it. Rhino re-released the Monkees catalog and sold them hand over fist. For many young fans, this is the first time they've got access to the albums because they hadn't been readily available before. Several years later, Rhino went on to buy the whole shebang. So Rhino is the current rights holder. They've got the rights to the TV show, the music, even the logo. Rhino owns it all. The success of this marathon and the associated record sales and all that sort of stuff led to an anniversary concert tour featuring Mickey, Davy, and Peter. Mike had said that he would be interested in doing it, but he had scheduling conflicts. He's always said that he was interested in doing this stuff, but he just couldn't work out the scheduling because he had too many other obligations that he had to live up to. I don't know. Grain of salt on that. But the tour was hugely successful, so much so that halfway through they started having to upgrade. They were expecting to be playing small venues, and before long, no, they're playing stadiums. I mean, it was a hugely successful tour. They were making money hand over fist. They released a greatest hits album with a couple of new songs attached to it. That was Then, This Is Now. That was mildly popular. Hit the top 40. Ooh, we're back on top of things. The success of this led to a full-length album. In 1987, the Monkees released Pool It, which is not a good album. I do not recommend this album. It sounds very much like an album recorded in a hurry to capitalize on a trend in 1987. Oof. But they continued touring, various configurations. Some tours they'd have Peter, some they wouldn't. But for the next 10 years or so, they'd tour for a while and then they'd stop, and then somebody would say, "Ooh, we've got some interest in a Monkee tour," and they'd start back up. And so they're essentially just touring. And then in 1996, all four Monkees reunited to record and release a new album, Justice. They had a new TV special, Hey Hey We're the Monkees, written and directed by Mike. They had a documentary that aired on cable, also confusingly titled Hey Hey We're the Monkees. And they even had a new tour, started in the UK, was supposed to extend beyond the UK. More on that in a second. So there was this nice little burst of activity in 96. And much of it was good. The documentary, strongly recommended. Easy to find on YouTube. Strongly recommended. You have to take everything they say with a grain of salt because this is the Monkees and they're telling their own story. And so, yeah, we can be kind to ourselves when we're reflecting upon things. But it also has a lot of insight. Some of the stories they tell of what it was like on the road, for example. Mike has a particularly entertaining story about how they very nearly succumbed to the beast at a concert that they were doing in Cincinnati. But I strongly recommend that. The album Justice is polarizing. A lot of Monkee fans don't like it. I think, all in all, it's actually one of their better albums, and I do recommend it. Just know that it does sound very 1987, or 1996, excuse me. The TV special that they did, Hey Hey We're the Monkees, surprised me when it came out. I had no knowledge that it was coming. It might be that at that time, I wasn't watching much ABC TV. It was shown on ABC, and supposedly they had been promoting it, but I had no idea it was on. I happened to be, I turned on my TV that night, whatever night it was on. I think it was a Friday, but I'm not sure. And was scrolling through the channel guide on the cable box to try to find something to watch, and saw Hey Hey We're the Monkees. What the? And went to it right as it was starting. I mean, it had been on for maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds. It's like, oh, what? Ooh, I know what I'm doing for the next hour. And I thought at the time it was a good show. I've watched it since, and I still think it was a pretty good show. It was written and directed by Mike Nesmith, and it had, I thought, a very clever concept. The conceit of the special, if you've not seen it, is that the original series never stopped being made. It just stopped going out on the air. that it's still been going on. They've been every week trying to find a new storyline, and one of the running jokes is somebody will think of a storyline and they'll say, "No, we did that one in '72 or whatever," and it's a good show. It has performance videos of some of the songs off of Justice, and it's got a pretty good sense of humor to it. Like everything else on this list, it's dated. It's part of 1996, and so it looks like something that was done in 1996. So you got to go into it with a grain of salt for that. But all things considered, it was a good special. It was a good album. It's a really good documentary. Overall, the mid 90s were a pretty good time to be a Monkees fan. The 90s were a good time to be a fan of the Monkees. The past 7, 8 years have also been a decent time. The Monkees made an album, released it in 2016. I had to look up the date. Called Good Times, which is a very good album, one of their stronger albums. It very favorably compares to Monkees, more of the Monkees, the stuff they did in their heyday. They also released Christmas Party, which is a decent Christmas album. The problem I have, the thing I have to admit to here, is that in 2012, Davey died unexpectedly, cardiac arrest. And when Davey died, the Monkees, as far as I'm concerned, died with him. Now, I've been to see the remaining guys. I caught the Midsummer Nights tour with the Monkey, whatever they called it, the summer of 2013, that had Mike and Mickey and Peter. I did catch that. They came to Austin. It was a wonderful concert. A couple of years later, 3 years later, I saw Mickey and Peter again up in Austin, and it was a wonderful concert. I thoroughly enjoyed both of those performances, but they weren't really the Monkees. That's not the Monkees unless we got all four of them. And I thought when Peter died in 2019 that was it. That I wasn't going to have an opportunity to see any more Monkee performances. But then Mickey and Mike started touring together. Now, I had seen Mike in concert with his first national band, Redux. This would have been 2018, 2019, that neighborhood somewhere. After he had had his open heart surgery. And he was still physically frail. He was still recovering from the surgery, but his voice was strong. He was sharp on stage, and the performance itself was fantastic. It was spectacular. There were times that I openly wept. I got to hear Calico Girlfriend performed by Mike Nesmith and the First National Band. Are you kidding me? Oh, it was just a beautiful night, and it was a wonderful concert. And so that was my memory of Mike. Then when Mike and Mickey started doing the Monkees Present the Mike and Mickey Show, they had a concert date scheduled to come here to San Antonio. And as soon as I saw that, bam, I bought a ticket. I'm going to go see this thing. And then COVID happened. And the show was postponed to later in the year. And then it was postponed to even later in the year. And then it was postponed to the following year. And it was postponed, and it was postponed, and it was postponed. It was finally set. It was definite. It was going to happen late fall of 2021. It was going to be the date that they did here in San Antonio was going to be one of the last 4 or 5 shows that they did on that tour. And I still had my ticket because it had been postponed and postponed and postponed, but I still had my ticket. But in the months heading up to that concert, I saw several bootleg cell phone videos on YouTube of performances that were at that time current, heading up to the one that they were going to be doing in San Antonio. And Mike was nowhere near as strong as he was. He was moving around easier, but he was not speaking clearly. He was not singing clearly. He was not performing with the strength and with the vibrancy that I had seen him perform with the First National Band Redux. And I didn't want to run the risk that this was going to be, that a weak Mike in concert was going to be my last opportunity to see him. And so I decided to just hold off and wait until maybe he's doing another solo show somewhere along the line. And then a few months later, December 2021, Mike Nesmith died. And if I get the chance in the near future to see Mickey on tour, I'll take it. His voice has aged well. His performances, as far as I can tell, are still strong. But it won't be the Monkees. And that's okay. The Monkees were an amazing band. They were it was an amazing television show. It was an amazing success of modern marketing. It's amazing to look back and realize that these guys, in the span of 3 years, released 6 albums with enough tracks left over to populate several other albums. They had gold records, they had #1 singles, they had #1 albums. They made 2 seasons of a television show. They made 1 full-length motion picture, and they had 3 concert tours, both in the United States and abroad. And all of this just 3 years after having met one another for the first time and having to teach one of their members how to play the drums. Finding out that they were being cast as actors in a sitcom. It's amazing. Mickey alone, to go from not knowing how to play the drums to several years later being asked, a few years later, being asked by Frank Zappa to drum for the Mothers of Invention. Are you kidding me? The Monkees were amazing. The great thing is, though, they always will be. It's the great thing about the Monkees story. Stories never die. Especially stories this good. And that's the history of the Monkees, according to Papa Nick. I hope you've enjoyed the journey. I know I have. And I look forward to your comments down below where you talk about the things that you agree with, the things that you disagree with. I always enjoy hearing from you. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate it if you'd click the like button. And I would appreciate it if you would click that subscribe button as well. It's free. You might as well. And I would appreciate it. If you do subscribe, please click the bell for notifications. I would appreciate that as well. Thanks again for taking this journey with me today, and I hope that the rest of your day is playful. See you soon.